and then to be followed by the presentation of the flag.
Our invocation tonight is from the pastor of the First Church of Nazarene, which is at 10th and Buchanan. First Church is 107 years old. As early as 1906 and 1912, the church started in tents on Buchanan Street and Clay Street. Had their first building built in 1914, Buchanan Street. Moved 3 times before eventually building their church that they are in today in the 1940s. 3 other Nazarene churches in Topeka have been birthed from that church as well. Here at First Church, they were a voting place for years and also hosted the Tennessee Town NIA, various events, as well as when Dillon's went out, the Central Strong Group was hosted there. With us this evening is Pastor Branson Roberts. He joined us in September of 2008. His wife works at Lawrence Memorial. They have 4 adult children, and one of whom is a Topeka police officer.
That's correct.
And we are happy to have you. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's pray. Almighty God, you are the Creator God, and everything exists for your glory. And by your word, you have shown us what you require of us: to act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly before you. Lord, we're so grateful for the privilege to live in the city of Topeka. Thank you for choosing and shaping ordinary people to rise up and lead this great city. And now to this council who are charged with serving the citizens of Topeka, whom you have chosen and shaped for such a time as this. O God, grant that all the public work which has been given to this body to do will only motivate them to serve their fellow citizens. Help them to set loyalty to the right things above all loyalty to party or to class. And grant that the importance of their work may never make them full of their own self-importance, but rather it may make them humbly eager to serve and to help the people of Topeka. Give them wisdom of mind, clearness in their thinking, truth in their speaking, and always love in their hearts, so that they may try always to unite people and never to divide them. Help them always to set the interest of the city above those of the party, and faithfulness to your requirements to justice and mercy above everything else. And so, God, grant that at the end of this day, they may win the approval of their own conscience, the respect of their fellow residents, and your well done. I humbly offer this prayer for the sake of Jesus, who was also chosen by you to serve among his fellow men and model the walk of justice and mercy. Amen.
Amen.
Please, color guard, attention. Color guard, advance. Color guard, hold. Color guard, post the colors. Salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, return to post. Oh.
You may be seated. We now proceed with the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Clear. Ortiz. Emerson.
Here.
Padilla.
Here.
Jensen.
Present.
Mays.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
And Lester.
Here.
Before we move on to the next items on the agenda, I want to recognize the Topeka Cadets, the Boy Scout Troop 7580, for their presentation of the flag today. Thank you so much for all that you're doing, and I wish you much success as you try to achieve your next levels. In addition to that, I also want to recognize the Top City Youth Council, who is here observing how the body of the city council operates. If you guys could rise so that we could recognize you as well. These are some young leaders who have desired to take a lead position in their community. They represent all of the districts of the city of Topeka, and they're going to be our partners as we make the community that they want to stay in. Thank you very much. We now proceed with appointments, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Bessie Talbert to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a term ending March 18, 2021.
The mayor does not have a vote in this. What is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval and a second by Councilman Cohen. Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is approval of a workers' compensation settlement in the amount of $20,500 for injury the employee sustained while engaged in normal work duties. B is denial of a tort claim appeal submitted by Jean Bryant in the amount of $1,635.83 for alleged damages to a vehicle due to a pothole. C is denial of a tort claim appeal submitted by Bruce Dolan in the amount of $4,124.45 for damages related to an alleged water main break. D is denial of a tort claim appeal submitted by Adrian Lowe in the amount of $320 for alleged damages to a vehicle due to a pothole. E is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Cumulus Broadcasting an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-170 concerning noise prohibitions. F is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the 2019 Cruise in the Capitol Car Show and rescinding conflicting portions of Resolution Number 9072. G are minutes of the regular meeting of March 12, 2019, and there's a list of open after midnight license applications. Staff is recommending approval.
We have heard the consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by Councilman Lesser, a second by Councilman Padilla. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to action items. Item 5, if the clerk will read. Item A.
A is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout in accordance with Section 1860-010 of the Topeka Municipal Code, approving a conditional use permit for recreation outdoor Type 2 facilities, including 1, a paintball course, 2, an obstacle course, and 3, a disc and foot golf course on property formerly known as the North Topeka YMCA, zoned R1 Single Family Dwelling District, located at 1936 Northwest Tyler Street in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, this item, as she mentioned, relates to the approval of a conditional use permit for recreation outdoor Type 2 facilities. Director Finder will go through the details related to this project.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, governing body. The proposal before you tonight is from Great Life, who has taken over the YMCA facilities in town. And so in doing that, they are looking at the North YMCA to convert some of the outdoor playing fields, the baseball and the softball diamonds, into obstacle course, a foot and disc golf course, and a paintball course. Of those, the paintball course was more intense than what was considered allowed by the current zoning, so that is why the conditional use permit is here before you. The issues that came up with paintball that had to be mitigated really had a couple, just had to be from screening from surrounding properties, and it also doubles as a containment of the paintball activity. So a lot of potential portable and temporary structures could come in. So we conditioned a screen to go, 6-foot screen to go around the paintball course, and recommended approval of that. We did not have, we had one neighbor come out to the neighborhood meeting, nobody at the plan commission meeting, so there was, all issues seemed to be mitigated at that point. So we stand before you recommending approval of the resolution.
Questions for Mr. Fyander? Councilman Clear, Deputy Mayor Clear.
Oh, yeah, this is for my own knowledge. It said the noise level of the paintball equipment shall be no louder than 50 decibels.
Decibels.
But the signals to signal participants can be 70 decibels. Why is that? Do we have like two different ordinance?
Well, the 50 decibels is from the, I think it's 10 feet from the paintball gun or whatever. The 70 decibels, no, I do not have a good answer why it's 70 decibels.
But isn't our rule the 50?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Isn't our noise level 50 decibels?
I'm not aware of that.
Does anybody know?
Councilman Jensen.
It's 50 feet.
Yeah, but for how?
We don't have a specific decibel level. In fact, that's an issue with the existing ordinance that at some point we need to address, but it's, the 50 you're thinking of is 50 feet. I distinctly remember that when we rewrote it, from wherever it was to where you could hear it.
So is this in there like 50 feet, or does it matter?
The noise would be interior to the property, and so it's not at the property line, I think, is what we would be concerned about. So the 70 decibels is not at the property line, it's interior to the course. So that wasn't an issue that.
I just want to know
Okay,
before
but
I get
that's-
any calls. So, just want to know why. All right, thanks.
What's the pleasure of the body? Councilwoman Clear, Deputy Mayor Clear. You have a motion for approval by Deputy Mayor Clear, second by Councilman Emerson. Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed by voting. Oh, ex parte communication, pardon me. At this point in time, we're going to try something new. This is to let everybody know that we have received any documents, and at this point in time, anybody that has received any sort of communication, either in favor or against this ordinance, should now declare that they have done so, and let us know if they have done so and if they're able to make an impartial decision.
Nothing from me.
Seeing nobody that has comments or information that have what they have received, we are now able to proceed with the vote. Do we have to vote again? Okay, awesome.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout setting the public hearing to consider the advisability of establishing a Community Improvement District, CID, at Southwest 17th and Southwest Wanamaker Road pursuant to KSA 126A26. Yes.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we take another step positive for growth. Interested parties are asking for us to establish a CID district at 17th and Wanamaker area. And so we bring before you the information to set the hearing date.
Thank you, City Manager. Questions from the body? See, Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask the city manager a question?
Absolutely, thank you.
We've had a couple conversations. Along the way, the council was promised a briefing on TIFs and SIDs, which we've not had yet. And I also personally, anyway, feel strongly that if, in fact, we're going into this hearing with an expectation that we would vote at the end of it, that there should be a discussion-only session beforehand so that we have had a full public discussion session for our own benefit, but also for the public's before we would go into a public hearing and vote. Have you considered having something on the 2nd or
Well,
prior to this hearing?
Mayor, I'm willing to have any type of meeting that we would want to have. I even mentioned it to Councilmember Cohen, that we're still interested in doing that. Would want to know the topics that you would want to cover, whether you're looking at a general discussion relative to a philosophy related to the use of TIF or CID, or understanding the procedures, or, you know, which way we're going, or if you're looking at specifically to these projects.
I'll let Councilman Cohen pick up after. For me, I think that, and just a review of both of them, and particularly I appreciate the email we got today with some examples of what the staff has been looking at. They're quite different, and we're all getting feedback. It's been a while since we've done one, and we promised we wanted it to go more smoothly than it did last time. And so to be able to have that conversation, because there's a lot of discretion once you get through the eligibility of a project. And so to be able to clarify again what a TIF, what the eligibility is for a TIF and what it does and how it can be used, and the same for a SID, and then in the event that they're being considered together, how they interface. But then we've already, I think all of us, had quite a bit of discussion about, well, do you just target all of this in areas, not just a site, but an area that's been disadvantaged? How do you make those decisions? And I would like to have us be able to have those conversations with questions or opinions when there's not a specific proposal at hand. So I'd like both.
Okay, Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. My intention was, you know, these items have been coming up, you know, pretty regularly now, and, you know, developers ask for one or the other or both, and I think my question is, you know, how are we planning to proceed from here on out? Are we just going to then, these are going to be on the table. Developers, you know, come to Topeka, these will be on the table, or, you know, project by project basis, something like that. I don't know. I just think that we at least need to discuss, you know, where we all would like to be proceeding forward. You know, and I think some of that discussion needs to be, you know, what is blight? You know, blight in some areas of town is different than blight in some other areas of town. I think we ought to at least agree that, you know, something is blight. I think we ought to have that conversation too. So that's where I would like to proceed with that, Mr. City Manager.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, as far as we look forward to these, you know, we went through a process that looks at our goals and development, and that one of those things is in order to grow the community and to take and have a growing tax base and to look at those things. And so we put that out there as a governing body, and what's happening now is we have individuals that have an interest in investing in our community, and so they're coming to us with these projects. They're selecting the area of the community they see that they want to do their development in. We're taking a look and evaluating that. We're looking at the statute to determine whether they're eligible or not. They're required to provide a blight study that shows the purpose that it is covered under blight. There's a statute that clearly defines what blight is. They have to meet a set of conditions in order to qualify as blight. And so those things are in place already, and that's what staff has been utilizing in order to determine whether or not it meets the criteria. And so that's what we've done, and then we present that information to you if it meets the criteria for consideration. And we, you know, and that's the other thing I want to do is focus. This is at the level that we're at related to the TIF. It's at the establishment of a district. We know there's a project out there, and we'll hear more about that tonight, but it starts at this level, and then we will evaluate and develop a development agreement that works to address the concerns that we may have as to what's an appropriate incentive relative to that project.
So I have two individuals that are holding to speak. I have Councilman Jensen and then Councilman Lesser, but I did want to say a few words. I think that one of the things that we did as a body was that we made sure that when we worked on these policies and before Nikki left, we had worked on this, was to ensure that we all had an understanding on how they were going to operate. We knew that this is what other communities are doing, and what I feel that we are yet to do is for us to establish where we want to see those districts established. And that would be a team of people working together saying, here is where we would love to see economic development. Now, that by no means would mean that if we have a great organization that is going to come to our community and really add something of benefit, that we wouldn't sit down as a body, which is what we're supposed to do, that we're doing, and have a discussion with regards to how we're going to proceed and if we're willing to have these sort of tools. They are the tools of the future, and not only that, I think that this is just one of the many things that says Topeka's open for business. So, but I understand where you're going, and Richard Hardman said the same thing before he left the council. It's important for us to determine where we want to see economic development really emphasized and really just pack certain areas in our community with these things. But again, we have to say as a body, here's where we would like to see them. So, but we had a conversation today, and we were talking about making sure that we understood what the desire of the body was, so that as we are setting a date to engage everybody, so that we know exactly what we want to get out of that meeting, so that we get in there, we know that we have like an hour, because, we meet a lot, and then we're able to just accomplish. But we had a conversation today about all of this. Councilman Jensen, to be followed by Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm inclined to agree with my fellow council people on, the need to discuss what is blight and how we leverage tools in our community. At the same time, though, I want us to consider what the traditional role of government is. Reactive. We wait until something is nearly falling to bits, and then we hope and pray someone comes in with more money than should be spent, and we sling some incentives to try and help them get back to where a building or a piece of property is even functional. The most recent TIF district and this CID are not going after buildings that are in absolutely dismal shape and falling apart yet. I am excited by our proactiveness with these two developers in our attempt to get buildings that if they're left alone will absolutely become serious blight in our community because they're falling apart now, or in the case of a rather large empty Kmart store, they're just sitting there. So I'm particularly excited about the fact that rather than waiting until those buildings are absolutely in complete disrepair and just a total eyesore, we're working with developers that want to take them in their current condition and make them something that's useful and something great for our community. And I do understand that we can't just sling these incentives around and do them for everyone, every place, every time. But I would encourage my fellow council people to look at the opportunity we have on the table, and if this is our shot to do something with an existing structure we have now, even though it may not be so bad that we consider it blight, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And if we don't jump on these options now, it could be years before they come around again, and then those buildings could be in too bad a shape to save. So I would encourage everyone to look at the opportunities we have and move on what we've got, as opposed to saying, no, we're just going to wait and hope for something else. That hope may not come. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple thoughts. I think we need to be cognizant and make sure that council has a thorough understanding of a CID and a TIF. Because while they get coupled together many times, they are two very different tools that we use. That being said, just in particular, the project at 17th and Wanamaker, you'll notice that this is a CID. It's not a TIF. Everything in here, with the exception roughly of $22,000 in landscaping, is going to this building, to this structure, to this private development building, that those expenses are not eligible under a TIF. So we're talking about two different types of tools. And both are very good tools. We need to utilize these tools. I agree with all the comments that my fellow council members have said, but we also have to be cognizant to a certain extent of when we do a CID, the effect that has on our tax base. The room that we have on that tax base if we want to if we need to increase our taxes to repair our streets and what have you, because we're pushing that boundary to a point where it's becoming too high. The other piece is we have to be able to, in a situation like this, we also have to be able to be cognizant of, developers that we have in this community for a long time, for instance, such as a Brady Robb of Brookwood Shopping Center, or Don Barry of Hillsdale Shopping Center, who put their money in their shopping centers, into their roofs, into their structures. Do not let those become blighted. And then the next thing is we look at doing a CID for somebody who's in their competition to basically give them the money for repair of a piece of property that then they may are going to sell for a profit down the road. I think all these things, there again, my point being is we have to take these things really seriously. We have to understand, and if you don't understand what it is, you need to read more about it. You need to understand what a TIF is, what a CID is. I had to do that. I had to learn more about it than I even knew, when I got on the council. But they're two drastically different tools, and they do have an effect. And while 1% doesn't seem like a whole lot if you're going to buy a hamburger, if we get into a position where we have to build another fire station, where we have to put more money into our streets, and we're already pushing a 10% tax level, what do we go to our customers, which is our constituents, when we're already giving that portion away? So I don't speak to this to say, hey, we shouldn't do these. We should do these, but we have to take these very seriously, and we have to be open for business so the process is fluid and the process is easy for people to get to. But we also have to take our time to do it and can't have it pushed down us to the point where we have to make a decision before everybody understands the repercussions of the decisions that they're making. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. An example with that, I really appreciate all the comments, is when we worked on the project at 29th and Fairlawn, we spent a lot of time conceptually first getting briefed on how that could work, but also being concerned about competition and not subsidizing somebody coming in that would then put somebody else out of business. And so we really spent some time going, who's coming in, like at 29th and Fairlawn or with the Cyrus downtown, and is this going to add value? Are more people going to go out to eat, or more people stay in this hotel because it's something different and therefore add value, or are we just moving people around? Because we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to put the businesses that are already here out of business. We wanted to make sure it added value. And the way we got to those conversations was like we're doing now, where the whole council was able to talk about just how those things worked and what we wanted to have done. Times change, and so what you want at a certain time might not be the same 5 years hence, depending on what's happening. And so I personally not only wanted the conversation because I need to understand it, but I also don't ever want a developer, every one of whom I really appreciate, to feel caught in crossfire because we're just getting caught up with each other. And that's why both the general session, and if that's right now, okay, but also a briefing before we go into the public hearing each time, so that when we have that hearing, we've had the public comment, they know, so figuring out what our procedures would be and what our calendaring typically would be, so that we can tell other people that, and that we know for sure there's going to be a chance to get the public input, our own and public, beforehand. Because I don't want to to be developer friendly, to me, we need that system so that we can be reliable and thoughtful and very professional when those hearings occur. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager.
Well, I know people's schedules are busy, but we can make ourselves available. I can make myself available. I don't know what else we may have going on, but Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday next week, if we wanted to have an evening meeting to review these things so that we're briefed on them prior to going to votes that we're looking at having occur on the 2nd and 9th. We need to move these forward, but we could continue to move and provide information relative. The information is there related to these. We're not looking at giving, none of these are actual, we're setting a district, but none of these are actually approving a development plan or agreement or district, TIF plan, excuse me. Got to keep the two separate, district and plan. And so potentially we could meet and people look at their schedules, and I can have Kelly check tomorrow and see which date works the best. That would be the wishes of the governing body.
Councilwoman Heller.
Is there, the TIF, you said a district, and then there are 2 steps, but in a SID, there's only one, isn't there? And so that particularly concerns me about moving the SID one that fast. Do we have time in the council meetings? We aren't privy to the advance agendas, but could we have that general discussion on April 2nd, have the briefing on this one, on the SID that we have in hand right now on the 9th, and then have the hearing on the 16th, and just progress? In a perfect world, I'd like 2 weeks between the briefing and the hearing, but can we do that during the council meetings, or is there too much on the agenda?
Well, I think from my point of view, if we're going to talk philosophies and ideas relative to use of TIF and SID in general, that's best served at a work session. And I would look at that as being a better option. And, you know, the desire that we have and we experience when we're working with developers is to, as best as possible, move the process along. There's weeks in between when we, for example, here set a CID, we now have to wait 3 weeks before. It's part of the reason that I moved and put this on the agenda now is that had we waited until April 2nd in order to set the hearing date, it would have been May before we would have been able to consider approval of the CID district. And so that would have delayed our developer a month. And with the timing, you're looking at retail sales, getting their operations up and running before Christmas, the busiest time of the year. We need to keep moving this project along in order to assist them, in order to be able to do their renovations in time.
Well, I'm happy to do whatever, but I just think we all need to be here, and it's hard to get us together at other times. And you know, once we establish this typical calendaring, then that'll just be part of what we say. And you know, these are big projects.
City Manager, if I could suggest, we used to have work sessions at 5 o'clock, and maybe the solution would be a 5 o'clock meeting prior to the council meeting. And that way, and I know that Kelly is going, and I'm not telling everybody that this is what we're going to do, because of course everybody's got to check their calendar. But if it would be possible, when you speak with Kelly, sending like a doodle poll that allows us to give you options.
Yes, ma'am. Can do that.
City, Councilman Jensen.
Could we hear from Mr. Peterson from the development team?
I think I'm done.
It's public comment.
Oh, all right, yes. Mr. John Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. John Peterson, Postonelli PC, on behalf of EIG Wanamaker LLC, who is the owner and hopeful redeveloper of the shopping center at 117th and Wanamaker. Thank you for the privilege to be here this evening and appearing tonight, and then be happy to answer any questions. To merely take this procedural step to call the public hearing. Number of good comments about more substance about this particular project, which we'd be pleased to participate in a work session or at the public hearing itself. I will say, this is sort of a typical refrain from a developer. Timing is important. The city manager really touched on it. We're really at the precipice of having some very interesting new tenants for this center. We can't make our deal with the tenant until we know what our financing structure is. The Christmas season is very important. We think we can get this done in 6 to 7, 8 months. Many leases are, if I'm not opening before the Christmas holidays, we're going to the next town, I'll see you next year. So again, that's our problem, but I guess I make the point to say, we'll make ourselves available, whatever it takes to help you all get up to speed. We're not talking about blight because we're not asking for TIF. It's just the CID. I do understand that is an add-on sales tax and it has policy decisions. But I want you to know that before we filed the application on behalf of the client, we did study your CID policy. It speaks to repositioning and rehabilitation of older retail facilities. So we feel at least to take that step that's a premise to further consideration, we're on sound ground. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We'd ask for your action tonight to at least set that public hearing. It would help us to go back to the tenants and say, at least we're moving in the right direction.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you so much. One of the things that we have done as we've moved along the way in prior developments is to have a session where the developer was able to share with us who they expected the tenants to be so that we had an idea if they were new and fresh, or especially if they were moving somebody across town. Is that possible with you, and is it important to you that that be an executive session, or can you be at a point where we can do that in public session?
I think if we had a work session prior to the public hearing, we could. It's yes, yes, and no. I think most of them we could identify the tenant. There are a couple we'd have to check with. Let's say maybe. Take that no out of the record and put maybe. Some, particularly national retailers, first to market particularly, which we do have some first to market retailers, are very sensitive about the disclosure that they're even looking in a community until they know they have property under control. So we'll work with you on that. I understand why you want to know, and for all the reasons you stated.
Seeing no additional comments or questions, what is the pleasure of the body? Councilman Jensen.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval by Councilman Jensen, second by Councilman Mays. Councilwoman Hiller.
I don't know when we're going to get the general session scheduled. I would propose a friendly amendment, if that's possible, that we plan our discussion session on the 9th and our public hearing on the 16th.
Do we have a second? Second for discussion. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess a question for the city manager and maybe the developer. Does that still meet the timeline requirements?
Probably better answered by the developer, Mr. Emerson, regarding what that might do to their proposed plan.
I don't even think Rome burned in a week. So if we could get to a public hearing on the 16th, we'll work with you. We want to work with you. We're not trying to be the big developer that says our way or the highway by any stretch of the imagination. So if the 16th makes the council more comfortable, we'll work with you.
Councilman Jensen.
I would accept your friendly amendment.
Deputy Mayor Clear.
So let me get I got to understand the reason why. So you're saying do our meeting first, the community meeting second, and then we'll vote third.
And I've been trying to follow this up with the city manager. In the past, when we have done the formal hearing, we have voted on the project at the end of the hearing, unless there was some reason to extend it. So we're talking just 2 meetings of discussion only to get all the information out, talk about it amongst ourselves, have the public have a chance to learn about it in advance and ask questions either then or before or after that time. Then the public hearing, when we come back, and the public can come back as well, do whatever final discussions we have on it and vote, is my understanding of it.
And it's all one meeting?
2 meetings, at least a week apart, so that there's a chance for public, our own knowledge and the public.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, with what Councilwoman Hiller is proposing, we would have a discussion on the 9th, regarding this particular project, and then we would have the hearing on the 16th and then vote after that hearing is done, which would then create the Community Improvement District.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So the first thing that we have on the table is an amendment to move this.
Friendly amendment
I accepted it, so
Yes.
it's just part of the motion then.
As long as your second was.
Yeah, because I changed the motion. When I accepted her friendly amendment, that changed the
You
motion.
changed the motion. Perfect. So at that point being said, we're not going to have to do two votes. We're only going to do one. If there's no additional comments or questions, we proceed by voting. Oh.
Ms. Ortiz? Okay, we have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item C, if the clerk would read.
C is a public hearing to consider establishment of a tax increment financing district at Sherwood Crossing at Southwest 29th Street and Southwest Wanamaker Road.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Governing body, tonight, we're considering the TIF district and for the Sherwood Crossing. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Manager Doug Gerber. He's been working through this project, provide some information, and then introduce our guests related to the developer.
Mr. City Manager, Madam Mayor, thank you. Governing body, good evening. I will start with a couple of brief comments, and then I will turn the time over to Ferd Neiman or Bruce Warner, and they're going to make a presentation to you this evening related to this project. As you know, I always like to start with a little bit of background on where we've been and where we're going. So where we've been, I'm sure you all remember in early February of this year, we met and had a discussion about TIFs, what they were, what they did, sort of the philosophical basis of TIFs. And then we, this body voted to set a public hearing date of this evening, March 19th. So here we are at the public hearing. And what we're asking for this evening is for your affirmation, a yes vote to set a public, or a district for this particular TIF project. As we have discussed, this is close to a $20 million project that will revitalize an area that is, has need of revitalization. So again, with your vote tonight, you will establish the district itself. And in terms of the process that we follow, this is really kind of the first bite at the apple. You'll have another bite at some point when the developer and ourselves bring back the development plan. And that's really where the more robust discussion happens about the final details of the plan, the development agreement, and all those sorts of things. So we will actually go through this process all over again, where we call for a public hearing, set the date, have the public hearing, and then the body will vote whether or not to consider the development plan. A couple more comments I would make just in terms of philosophy. As we talk to our peers across the state, these tools are in use everywhere across the state, even in areas that are booming. I mean, as I talk to my colleagues in Lenexa and Overland Park and Olathe, they're doing TIFs and CIDs. I don't know if it's fair to say right and left, but they're certainly doing them on a very routine basis, and that, I think, is the kind of development we aspire to have. So it's certainly a positive tool for cities to use in development cases. The second thing I would say is that in terms of blight, I would encourage you to not think of it blight like a house that is run down and the paint is falling off, but instead there's a specific statutory definition of what blight is. I think the study in here covers that very well, that was provided in your packet. In complete candor, those studies can oftentimes say what you want them to say, right? I think we probably all know that. But I think if you really read this study, you'll recognize that the facilities in this particular area have some significant issues that need to be addressed. And as our bond counsel likes to say, I'll give Kevin Cowan credit for this, your logic and your vote on what blight is and isn't is pretty unassailable. So once you make that determination, it is what it is. So that is up to this body. So unless there's any other questions for me, I will turn it over to, I believe Ferd is going to come up and give you a presentation.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Councilman, Mr. Gerber, Mr. City Manager, thank you for having me here. Ferd Neiman with Christie Development and the owner and applicant for this property, 29th Street Partners, LLC. I think we've got a PowerPoint here. All right, I'll try not to take too much of your time, but be here to answer as many questions as I can, and like our predecessors here in the prior project, willing to work with the council on some process, answering questions. By way of background, I've been on a lot of different sides of economic development deals. I'm a real estate attorney and incentive attorney by trade, developer, but also I spent 5 years at Jackson County, Missouri, and Kansas City, where I sat on the TIF commission for every city in Jackson County. I then was the director of economic development, so I was in the recruitment side, and later became the property tax assessor for Jackson County, so handled the administration and implementation of TIF projects, as well as tax appeals and other things. So fairly well-versed in these areas, so I've heard the pros and cons and seen the pros and cons, and also coming from Kansas City, as Mr. Gerber mentioned, on both sides of the state line, lots of projects have had incentives, stacking, layering, if you will, with numerous different incentives, sometimes a single incentive. And as a number of you mentioned earlier, they're different animals and there are different reasons to implement them, whether it's a housing project, a commercial project, a retail project, and I can address some of that if so desired. This is the project we're looking at today, the current Villa West Shopping Center, the northwest quadrant of 29th and Wanamaker. The area in the red is the property that we own. As you can see, we've got 2 main commercial buildings and then about a 0.47 acre pad site on Wanamaker and about 2.5 acres to the north of the existing shopping center. The 3 pad sites in front of us, Capitol Federal, the Kansas Land Building, which also includes Giroville and Smoothie Shop, we do not own, and then we do not own the Big O Tire Shop, but the Big O Tire Shop is in our proposed boundary, which you'll see on a later slide. We had tried to purchase the Kansas Land Building for purposes of trying to do a build-to-suit for CVS. It's currently in line in the shopping center, where CVS, as you see most of the time, they have a drive-through, and they're a standalone building. The prototypes are between 15 and 20,000 square feet. They're a little bigger than that in our shopping center. We wanted to give them their prototype. We couldn't get that building bought. Somebody else did, so it's still Kansas Land. It's not part of our plan. But we are looking to revitalize more than just a shopping center, which is why we have reached a handshake deal with Big O Tire. It's subsequent upon the passage of certain these incentives and a contract. But on this next aerial, you'll see in the yellow is existing Big O Tire. That's owned by a franchisee, Dutch Tryon, one of the higher producing Big O Tire stores in the country. They do a lot of business. It's nice looking in there. The guy knows more about tires than anybody you'll ever meet. It's impressive. So we're happy to work a deal with Dutch. We're looking at an expansion there, which is good for us in one way, that the pad site is, if we build a building in the middle of that pad site, it's going to block the visibility to the shopping center behind, which is going to make it harder to lease up, as well as it's going to block some of the visibility to the 2.5 acres to the north. So in order to get, ideally a national tenant, and we'll talk a little bit more about tenant-based demand, we could fit up to 22,500 feet there. We were looking at Ashley Furniture there. They end up going somewhere else. We've shown this to some other national tenants in the 22,000 feet, new to the market, but right now they're not going to come to the center in its current condition. So we need to ask them to have a vision, and I'll show you some pretty pictures. The architecture, that's the vision we got to show them. Right now we can't deliver that. It'll be a lot easier to do that expansion area when it's real, when you can see it. So the goal for us is to get the right economic deal, which we think is a combination of CID and TIF. And the boundary for both of those, as proposed, is the red polygon you see before us, which includes the yellow rectangle that is Big O Tire. Next, I want to talk about blight. I know this is, we hear a lot, West Topeka, East Topeka. The Wanamaker corridor is a pretty thriving corridor, but not every property is. I mean, you see, Mr. Gerber talked about, over the Parkland X. I mean, you got 159th and Metcalf receiving incentives. You've got other areas of Metcalf. You've got Mission Road. You got Row. You got 435 corridor. We've worked on deals on I-49. I mean, Zona Rosa up near the airport, the Country Club Plaza, the Convention Hotel, the Kaufman Performing Arts Center Hotel. Why is it those projects that are high-end need a shot in the arm, need some juice? It's because you need to look at it, in my mind, on a micro-level basis. You want to look macro-level on things like blight, economic vitality, but also micro-level, how do we remediate a struggling building? This facility has some dilapidated nature. It is blight, in my opinion, by the definition of the statute. But if you look at it, the roof, it's falling apart. Okay, we've got, parking lot, the curb appeal is not a very good curb appeal. This is the kind of stuff that we would look to fix, facade, streetscape, parking lot, signage, these sort of things. We've got some drainage issues. This is behind the facility. These are photos from the blight study, which was a couple months ago. So this is not from recent rain or recent snow. These are not cherry-picked photos. There's a bad terrain back there that needs some remediation. So we're proposing additional roadway behind there, additional parking behind there to solve some of this. Also allow us to, get rid of some of the sea of parking out front, which we could do in a future phase by putting buildings out there. We want to create a courtyard atmosphere, vibrancy, people sitting outside, having meals, having drinks, listening to music. Right now you see this picture here of the tower. Our plan is to tear that tower down, tear these kind of terraces down, and just open it up. We would like to do 2 restaurants right there. We're talking to a regional restaurant breakfast group right now. And if we get this deal done, we're going to bring a new to the market regional breakfast group that's going to be between 4,500 and 5,000 feet right here. But kind of like the previous developer said, we need to know the economic. We can't go spend millions and millions of dollars on the come and then not know if we got a deal in hand. But we can't get the tenants to come with the existing building. It's not, as the free market has shown in the last 5, 10, 20 years, it's just not getting it done in its current condition. And a lot of we've only owned the property for a few months. This predates us, but it is the current condition which we believe is blighted. I mean, that air conditioner unit in that bottom corner, that's an actual air conditioner unit that's sitting on the facility. Clearly, it's not producing any coolant, any cooling air. So that's a minor thing, but that's just a microcosm of the level of deferred maintenance that's been going on that we're trying to remediate. Here's our plan, big picture, in 2019 and finishing up early 2020, new facade, higher elevations, new fascia signage, new pylon signs, updated landscaping and parking lot, remediate that deferred maintenance, expansion of Big O Tire, and increase the occupancy. We're 35% vacant today. It's really hard for us to get even cheap lease rates with existing conditions. We want to rise the tide of all ships, get the market to go up. A lot of the Topeka buildings are owned by just 1 or 2 people, didn't take care of them. It's driven down a lot of the lease rates, which is harder to get national tenants to come move in these sort of some centers like this. Not that we need national tenants. We have local tenants, we have regional tenants. National tenants are good from a credit perspective, and they're good for co-tenancy perspective. It's hard to get, like we show this to a couple of TJX concepts, which is Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Marshalls. The first thing they say is, what's the renovation plan? Second thing is, who else is coming? Right now, we've only got enough vacant space for one of them, and that size of that tenant, just one space. So in order for them to come, we need to also build something new. Well, we can't build something new unless we get the rest of the facility. So it's kind of a chicken-egg problem, which is why you have phases in a lot of these developments. And we also want to rebrand it. So we're going to rename it Sherwood Crossing. New signage is going to say that. As far as expansion plan, I mentioned right-size expansion. We can fit 22,000 feet on that 3-acre pad. But if we find somebody that's 3,500 that is right, that has good sales volume, or maybe it's not even retail. We desire retail, being retail developers, but maybe somebody wants to do a 2-story office building there. Maybe there's a medical office need, an urgent care building. We're open to a mixed-use plan. I mean, currently the north area is zoned, the whole area is zoned PUD, and the north project is zoned for self-storage. We don't want to do self-storage, so we'll come back to this body again for zoning, for planning, in addition to, we're here tonight for the TIF district, later for the TIF project plan and development agreement, and then we're coming back in April for the CID approval of the district. Here's the site plan. A couple things to show you here. I talked about this north building. I don't know, you probably can't see my pointer here. This north building here, 22,000 feet, that's vacant right now. So that's an expansion plan. That building does not exist. Along the frontage here, that's the expansion of Big O Tire. And then in the middle of the parking lot here, we've got, this site plan shows an 8,000 square foot facility. It could be 6, could be 8. We're thinking about facing that, the glass walls of that building, facing the glass walls of the existing shopping center, which will be glass. So you have kind of a more centrally focused courtyard, walkable feel. You also will notice a drive lane, which is to the north of CVS. This isn't finalized yet with CVS, but we're negotiating with them to put in a drive-through with them to get them to reinvest in that store. They do, from what I'm told, they do a really good pharmaceutical business there, but if you've been in it, it's not one of the most updated CVS facilities in the region, in the country. We'd like it to be. And they generally would pour more money into it if we could do that standalone building. As I mentioned, we haven't been able to get them that standalone site. So how do we do it? I'll show you, the bottom picture here shows you this. The red signage, you can see that kind of looks like a new prototypical standard CVS, standalone. That's what we're proposing for them, a drive-through where we would actually demolish about 5,600 square feet of the building, put up a new wall, put a drive-through in, which would require, of course, better roadway behind the facility so you can access that drive. The green signage, that's the existing subway, so we would have them some built-up signage as well. That's on this east elevation on the bottom photo. The top photo is the south elevation of what our architect is calling Building 1, which is 29th Street side. So on the far left, where you see that the yellow canopy, that's Pampered Pets. We've got Happy Bassett. We've got the Hair Mill, Barbershop, and a few vacancies before we get to back to Subway. So we rip off the facade of the building. We put canopies back in. If you're familiar with Johnny's Tavern in Shawnee, Kansas, and where Nuts and Bolts is and Savers, that's a similar size project we did. It's simply the same, architectural team. We haven't picked all of our contractors and stuff for this facility yet, but similar renovation plan where we took a greatly vacant site and got it fully leased up. Increased, sales, property tax base, obviously energy at the complex. These two buildings, the gap between Building 2 and Building 3, that's where your current kind of clock tower is. So you can see we've opened it up. We plan to have patio seating inside the archway there, or the gap, as well as out front. And then the bottom building that's where you have Manpower, Sola Salon, and Cosmoprof now, and we have a vacant space there as well. So those are the existing buildings. This last building is Building 5, and I've got the little red arrow there showing you where it is. That's that interior building. So obviously no tenants are in this building yet. None are identified. We're going to fill up the existing vacant space before we go build this building. But once you have a fully occupied center and we have a nicer looking center, then it starts to make sense to build additional square footage. Highlights, increased economic activity, new jobs, new restaurants, new retailers, high-quality renovation, a new image and brand for the shopping center. As I mentioned, the timeline, we want to get started. We'd like to get started with construction here this summer, maybe even a little sooner, and then finish those center buildings here in 2019, and then finish the outer buildings, 29th Street, end of 2019, early 2020. And then the next phase is the 2 increased buildings. Those would start next year, and the size of them and the exact layout are kind of subject to which tenants we identify at that time. Financials, you got about a total $18 million project. We've got developer debt and equity about 16.65. Those two numbers don't add up to 18. The reason is the TIF and CID, we're asking for a pay-as-you-go. So from a purpose of financing, if it's supposed to be $100,000 to CID 10 years from now, that's not $100,000 today. So for our capital stack, our lender's going to give us, we have to pledge that revenue, if so granted, to our lender, and it's not going to have the same weight. So they do that. Next year's money is worth more than the year before, the year after, TIF in Kansas can run 20 years, CID 22 years, so clearly that year 22 money is not worth as much as year 2 money. That's how the pay-as-you-go essentially works, and by virtue of being pay-as-you-go, there's no debt obligation for the city, no GO bond, no credit risk. Like I live out by Zona Rosa, that's a big nightmare right now where there's credit risk. Black County's got to put in money or not, so it's going to impact my property taxes and in my county's credit. And no performance, no incentives. So if we don't get the property taxes up, we don't get the sales taxes up, if you authorize us for $3.35 million of reimbursement and there only is enough to generate 1.35, we're the ones that left $2 million on the table. So we're motivated to perform. I know, you're aware that our group did the Academy Sports Project on Wanamaker. Dave Christie's done 5 or 6 projects at least in Topeka, and I think in every corner of Topeka. And the first 4 or 5 were not incentivized, to prove like not everyone needs it, not everyone gets asked for incentives. The specific incentives we are asking for add up to total about 18.83% of our budget, which is within the policy recommendation of under 20. It's the 1% sales tax redirection on TIF, incremental property tax redirection on TIF, and then for the CID, it's that 1 cent add-on, similar to you heard about on the last project. I did look at the CID policy objectives and the TIF policy objectives, so I know from sitting in the gallery here, you're going to have another meeting, a session. We're going to participate in that. Councilman Hiller's made comments to us and also the public that you want to make sure the policies are followed. I'm a policy guy. I look at these things, and for us as a developer coming in, is Topeka open to business? We look at the existing policies. If we fit within the existing policies, we feel it's almost like being grandfathered into zoning. We feel like we fit with the comprehensive plan. We fit within the zoning use plan. Now, there's still obviously legislative and procedural hurdles and discretion and public policy for you all to determine. But for us, are we doing these things? Strengthening economic development opportunities. Yes, employment opportunities. These employment opportunities, by the way, are for people West Topeka, East Topeka. You can come eat here regardless of where you live. You can come work here regardless of where you live. So it does have, in my opinion, a ripple effect. Obviously, older real estate we're trying to upgrade, enhancing economic climate, diversifying the economic base, construction jobs, tourism, that's probably the weakest one we've got on here. Are we enhancing the quality of life? Yeah. Are we enhancing construction? Yeah. Tourism, depends how much you like biscuits and gravy. I guess, so you're going to drive for it. For this place, you probably will. Economic diversification, broadening the tax base, stimulation of private investment, elimination of blight, enhancement of and support of new development, creation and quality employment opportunities, increase per capita income. And this last one is a direct quote, whereas to meet these economic development goals, the city recognizes the need to occasionally assist in the redevelopment of property located within the city by the creation of TIF. So we're trying to fit within the guidelines, policies. We think we're doing it. Obviously, we're here asking for public assistance. We want to do a public-private partnership. If we're going to be partners, we need to work together. So, of course, open to input, comments, questions, and appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed with comments and questions for the developer, we do have 4 individuals signed up to speak, and I think that it would be good if they could get their questions out of their way and we could just keep having the conversation with them, if that would be okay with the body. So, first person signed up to speak is Gary Yeager.
Good evening. I'm Gary Yeager. I'm president of Vision Bank. We are about 1 block away from the current Villa West. We do not have any relationship nor any borrowing with David Christie or any of his affiliates. I want to make that perfectly clear. We as bankers understand or think we understand what lease rates are in the market, what subprime lease rates are, what prime lease rates are, and what it takes for a developer to come into this town and develop not only Christie but some of the other ones. And looking at this center, I remember back when B.B. Anderson built it, and it was very vibrant, and it brought in a lot of people to that particular center. In all honesty, the last time I'd been to Villa West was to Happy Bassett, and there are a lot of stores there. There's a lot of vacant stores there now. But I guess my point is that to get developers to come into our town, to be able to get banks like ourselves to finance projects like this, unfortunately, they need some help through a TIF district. So, in looking at this particular project, kind of the big buzzword now is quality of place. And looking at the plans, I truly believe that this would add to quality of place, and it would take a center that's really in need of repair to a center that could be a nice, vibrant center. So, that's it.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Yeager. Next person signed up to speak is Mr. Nick Sidis.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I have no affiliation with either of these projects, and I'm really here to speak to you tonight as a citizen. I've watched a number of comments publicly made on social media and other things that are pretty divisive about tax increment financing type tools, and I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned that many times the media reports of these things are somewhat misleading and often incomplete in their explanation. And I'd like to point to the importance of public and private partnerships and whatever form those take. And I wanted to share with you specifically some details behind the downtown redevelopment, which I think was a wonderful public-private partnership. The city provided the streets, took care of the infrastructure, took care of the sidewalks. Private investment bought artwork, put parks in, has brought new businesses into that area. I'd like to share with you some of the details around that. Hazel Hill Chocolate's building has valuation that's increased by more than double since that's occurred. And we've fortunately had retail sales that have allowed us to absorb that additional property tax payment, and we've expanded our staff because of that. So those are all new sources of revenue that the city receives as a result of a successful investment that was both a public and private partnership. We also own the building next door, and H&R Block is a tenant there. That space has been remodeled as a partnership between us and the H&R Block company. That property's value has also more than doubled in its assessment. Okay? So I can't speak to everybody on Kansas Avenue, but I thought I'd share with you and put into the public record that these things are not giveaways to developers. These things bring tax revenue in the form of property tax, they bring retail sales tax, and they also help employ folks. One of the things that's important is that additional revenue comes in is I know you're trying to be a financially responsible body in how you operate the city and govern. That additional revenue, I believe, allows you to keep the property tax and sales tax rates as low as possible as growth and valuation rises. You don't have to burden folks at the level that you might have to in a contracting or a stagnant economy. So I'd like you to consider that as part of it. I would encourage you, as these different vehicles come before you, to consider each one on its merits. I would hope as a taxpayer and a citizen here that you would consider them as investments in our community, that you would make appropriate risk versus reward decisions on those. I would hope that you would also make sure that the developers are taking an appropriate level of risk for those projects that we choose to incentivize. So again, I wanted to speak in favor in general that public-private partnerships are good for the general public at large. It helps the city be responsible and keep tax revenue rates as low as they can be compared to having a shrinking or contracting economy. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Ms. Moore Jarens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. It's an honor to be here. I'm speaking for myself today. I live in Topeka, in central Topeka. I'm glad you had the earlier discussion. It showed me a great deal about you as people. And the reason I wanted to talk today was because I'm very concerned about the central core of our city. And both of the TIF projects to date that we have right now going are concentrated in development areas of the city that are rather affluent. The central core residents serve the larger Topeka community in concrete ways. They work in service jobs at restaurants and retail outlets. They'd be the people trying to find a bus to come out to work at new jobs. Some are gaining higher wages now because of the special trips that Metro Transit is providing for them to get to industrial sites for those jobs. Those people in central Topeka pay a higher proportion of their incomes on local special sales taxes. And I'm estimating that about 4 weeks of groceries are the cost of both the city project, the city special sales tax, and the economic development sales tax. which are paid by our poorest at a much higher percentage of their incomes. The TIF policies you created last year favor tax increment financing in neighborhoods of greatest need for revitalization. And I'm delighted to find and was pointed to those new policies you did create in the spring, saying that it really is important that we do this special taxing issue in the areas of greatest need. Please stick to that priority for your TIF subsidies. We know that basic needs and services for even adequate housing, bus service, and fresh food are not met there. 20% of the properties in central Topeka, for instance, are vacant. 24% of the persons living there do not have a vehicle. And the grocery store left in 2016 with a 3-week notice. You have denied a 1 mil increase in support for the bus, which is essential to their lives and provides transit for employees to get to work. You have refused a single dollar to date to fund proven low and moderate housing needs for the same persons. I am personally ashamed of your lack of concern and your apparent preference for out-of-town developers wanting to rebuild in higher income areas to date. I understand that Mayor de la Isla has looked for ways to require that developers pay into a housing fund. I believe the answer is that it can't be required. Keep looking for a way. True, we have 500 churches and many nonprofits who are free from paying property taxes in our county, but large corporations are granted both sales and property tax exemptions, amounting to $7 million a year as well, without a string attached, without a blink from our commissioners. We gave another $7 million in business incentives through Go Topeka last year, I believe. I think that was public money too. I could be wrong about some of that. Connect those handouts with a request to support the Metro Transit Authority. Ask them to help create grocery stores in our deserts that would strengthen their workers and rebuild our community. Ask them to help finance low and moderate income housing with the benefits. May I have one moment?
Ms. Ahrens, how many minutes would you need?
I only need a minute.
A minute? Motion to approve, 1 minute?
Second.
We have a second. We proceed with voting.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes. Ms. Ahrens, you have another minute.
Thank you. So ask them to help fund some way for low and moderate income housing from the benefits they gain from paying lower taxes. Ask them to give in writing a plan for feeding a share of their profits back to our struggling schools, or simply stop the incentives altogether and turn the tax support saved toward areas of real human need. Think about the kinds of influence to which you bow. Think of how you could hear and see the whole community instead of the intoxicating ideas of maybe economic development. It's public policy that contributes to the poor health of this place or could add to its well-being. Ask for an audit of all the money we give to businesses here without any demands on them toward the common good in return. It ought to be a privilege, not a right, to do business when you gain access to the city and county's money through exemptions and incentives. When you make those donations to businesses, they ought to owe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your comments. At this point in time, body, we have heard from our community, and we have heard also from the developer, and if we have any questions, the developer is here to answer any questions that you may have, as well as our staff. Councilman Jensen.
Madam Mayor, the agenda says public hearing. Don't we need to declare a public hearing and ask 3 times?
That is correct. I am not on the ball today.
It's your birthday, we'll give you some slack.
Yeah. So at this point in time, we are opening a public hearing, and I am looking forward to seeing if there is anybody in the public that would like to speak specifically to this issue. Asking again twice, if there's anybody else that would like to speak to the specific issue. Third time? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Thank you for the correction, I appreciate it. Councilman Jensen?
With that, I will move to approve.
We have a motion for approval. We have a second by Councilmember Coleman. Additional discussion. Councilwoman, Deputy Mayor Clear.
I have a question for the developer.
Yes.
The only thing that saddens me is the tower. Did you think about keeping that?
I was actually going to give you one of the clay tiles as a souvenir.
Oh.
We've thought, no, but we seriously, it's not in very good shape. It's probably not worth saving financially. Plus, we thought about it as from a rebranding perspective. I mean, Lindenmuth Group owned this property for a long time, and it's really gone into disrepair. And we want a fresh start. And that's the main reason for the name. I mean, generally, if it's got a good name and people know it, you like name ID, notoriety. But sometimes you want to shed that notoriety, and that's the case here. And the tower is, I think, the most recognizable symbol of this property.
I'm going to hold you, I want a tile.
All right.
I'm gonna hold
as
you
long
to
as it
that.
doesn't violate any gift rules in the Kansas Constitution, which it might.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
A couple of questions, if I might. First, and I'm both as the developer proposing here, and also since you're here and you have the experience that you do, could you talk for a moment about the issues of investing in more retail and the issues of whether we're at risk or whether we're doing ourselves a favor in terms of our local businesses and competition that's here?
That's a good question. I mean, there's always going to be, I think, a need for a mix of local, regional, national tenants. I mean, for example, service-based tenants, you'll see a lot of those that are local. There's niche retail sales. I mean, Happy Bassett's already expanded once in the facility and once elsewhere. We'd love to expand them again. I mean, it's one reason it's hard to expand a smaller business like that with only a CID, which is why we originally we were looking at just a CID. But with the CID in Kansas, you're not allowed to do a 1-cent sales tax add-on on liquor. So we said, Happy Bassett, you guys are booming, you're doing great. We want to double your size. But if we do, at the expense of the vacant space with a different CID generating tenant, it would actually be detrimental to us. Same thing with CVS and pharmaceuticals. Same thing with a bar that has alcohol sales. So there's the need for that local tenant, but because of the statutory, constraints that we have, sometimes there's a mix. I mean, so if I had the opportunity to rent the same space to a dentist or a guy that sells T-shirts, and they're going to pay the same rent, with incentives, I'm motivated to rent a T-shirt guy every time because he's going to generate sales. Now, from the city coffers, you probably want T-shirt sales too, but you need to have a blend. And there's a lot of risks today in retail. Obviously, Amazon effect is definitely felt. I think we got overbuilt, and I think at macro level, and then the malls. Malls are dying. There's not going to be very many left. So those retailers, those tenants, are going to go somewhere. So the malls, I think, are the ones that are going to probably be more demolished, turned into, your Topgolfs, your movie theaters, your restaurant parks, things like that, or maybe just other uses. Some are going to turn into self-storage, which people don't like a lot. But Kmart, I've seen a lot of Kmarts become self-storage. So for us, we still want to chase retail, but we don't want all retail. But I mean, overall, there's still a lot of thriving national tenants. Local tenants are more, you got to get the right person, the right fit. And you need to watch them expand too. There are some local tenants that can run a great store or a great restaurant, but then if it's a one-man band and they try to do two, they're spread too thin, it doesn't work. Versus a franchise, Culver's or McDonald's, they've already figured out the system. You could plug me in, I could run a Culver's with the right system, where I couldn't run Happy Bassett. There's one, somebody that's a more of a unitary system that person has figured out. But we like I said, we still think there's an opportunity for retail even more. Like we're talking about building more buildings. There are retailers that are not here, as you're well aware. Some of those big retailers, are not going to come based on just the metropolitan size. You're not at 250,000 people, so you can't have a Main Event. Or you can't have a Costco maybe. But there are other retailers, TJX is one of the best retailers in the country right now. You've got, I think, TJ Maxx or Marshalls, but you don't have Home Goods. So there's no reason they can't be here. You've got other tenants like Ross and, Ulta, these national tenants. you bring those and other retailers will follow. It's hard to prime the pump and get it going without an anchor or two. And the grocery store anchors grocery stores are getting smaller. That used to be the key anchor. And right across the street we had Hy-Vee. But grocery stores were 68, 85,000 square feet. Now they're dropping down to 45. We own a Kohl's in Lenexa. It's 106,000 feet. The new Kohl's prototype is 48. So, Kohl's is teaming up with Aldi. I mean, everybody's shrinking down. CVS is down 15,000 feet. Aldi's actually expanding. They're one of the few that's actually getting bigger. So it's definitely a lot of, musical chairs and trying to fit all the puzzle pieces together. But it's not easy, as we've seen at a macro level. It's not just a Topeka issue; it's a retail nationwide issue.
Thank you for those answers. I'm wanting to ask you for myself, but also I have had a chance to visit with you. I don't know if everybody in the council has, and I know that the public hasn't. So trying to keep in mind some of the questions that we've gotten. The second one, if I may, is I think I know the answer, but
vote yes.
with it being blighted, would you have you bought it already, so would you have, why is it that you wanted the incentive, and would you have fixed it up anyway, and to what extent without them?
That's a great question. So we sometimes you won't buy a property until you have your zoning, until you have your entitlements, until you have your incentives. The nature of this one, we had this property and White Lake Mall under contract. Originally it was going to be one contract. We ended up bifurcating the contracts because of the timelines, where the Lindenmuth Group wanted to sell this one. It required this one be closed on in 60 days. We didn't have the luxury of time to come in here. So we said, okay, we're going to roll the dice and buy it. And it wasn't through some hubris that we were going to get the incentives approved. It was because plan B is, put lipstick on the pig or do the Band-Aid approach. We own the property. If the roof leaks, we'll patch it. If the drive it or the stucco falls off, we'll patch it. Are we going to try to lease the existing spaces? Sure. But are we going to lease them at $18 a foot? No. I'd love to, but nobody's buying that snake oil. We're going to get $10, $11 leases. Now, if we fix up the facility, which is going to take a massive renovation, rip off that facade, increase the height, I don't know if I mentioned, increase the height so we have better signage, better visibility, with 3 pad sites in front there, and those aren't little bitty coffee shops. I mean, those are all 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot buildings. That's blocking a lot of our visibility. Don't tell the prospects I'm saying that. But I mean, it really does. So we need to do a major transformation. So with incentives, it becomes economically possible. Without incentives, it's probably keep the Band-Aid on, operate low. It's cheaper to do it like that. We don't take on a multi-million-dollar loan, put up multi-million dollars of equity. And sometimes it's more profitable to run it like a slumlord. And not that we would do that, but I own single-family residential properties, duplexes, mobile home parks, mobile homes. I've done different classes, and you can run stuff like a slumlord, and it may me more profitable in the short run, but long-term, you just have deferred maintenance, more problems. Plus, what are you doing to quality of life? What kind of applicant? What kind of tenant you bringing in? Improving the general ambiance of the neighborhood, or in this case, the shopping center, is going to get you a better quality shopping center.
Thank you. One last question, which is, we talked about layering TIFs and SIDs. And so why is it that you touched on it in your first answer, but why the mix? If you could just help us.
The mix is for diverse revenue streams. So being the former county assessor in Jackson County, I saw what happened if you didn't raise the property taxes on a property in a TIF. And like Kansas City Power and Light District, perfect example. $200 million bond issuance. The assessor before me didn't raise the taxes. Put it on the books for $12 million. Well, guess how much the increment was? It was almost nothing. Now, in that case, the city of Kansas City signed a general obligation debt to backstop that debt. Well, when there was no increment, there was no incremental revenue to pay down the debt service, which meant who was the co-signer? It wasn't mom and dad, it was the city. So they had to come in, they're paying $14 million a year general fund obligation. So if we didn't have a co-signer in this case, which is, we're not asking for that, but we were banking on the assessor increasing the valuation after renovation, and it didn't happen, well, then there's no revenue. We did what we were supposed to do. There was no revenue, which means you don't get paid back. So you diversify that by property taxes, which is a TIF, sales tax redirection, which is only partial to TIF. And keep in mind, in Kansas and TIF, you're helping your school district because 20 mills are exempt from TIF capture, and your state taxation is exempt from TIF capture, which means the more we increase, like these new buildings or just renovating the buildings, that's new property tax base, that's new revenue for your school district. While not city coffers, not a direct fiscal impact for the city, as a more cost-benefit analysis or global economic benefit for the city, it's going to help neighborhoods. It's going to help, that neighbors in that school district. That's not citywide. Then the CID is the add-on sales tax, which often is less, contentious because it's not moving money around as much as this is new sales tax. Yes, you have to. The customers are going to pay 1 cent more. they get to choose whether or not to shop there. Now, if in theory, if every shopping center in the city had a 1 cent CID, it would have that impact that I heard about earlier, that it is increasing the property. It does increase the sales tax base. But what are you getting in return? There's no city infrastructure needs going into the center. I mean, there's not overall blight that's going to. So, for example, if we let this building turn into a shell, a boarded up building, it's probably going to hurt the guy next door. It's probably going to lead to other problems, vagrancy, crime, additional city services in that regard. So, we think a blend of the capital stack allows, I guess, a diversification of risk, and then also gives us an ability to more incentive to perform, because we get paid. We don't perform, we don't get paid back, right? So we want to pay these things off. I don't want this TIF to last 20 years and the CID to last 22 years. We'd like to see it get paid off in 12, 13, 14 years, which means our risk is reduced, our bank's risk is reduced, but then also what happens? It goes fully. We're not taking the building with us. When the TIF runs out and the CID runs out, if it's 14 years from now, those buildings, especially those new buildings, they're there and they're on the tax rolls for the first time. That's new revenue long-term for the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Emerson.
And Mr. Neiman, I didn't have any question for you. I just, in general, I did meet with Mr. Neiman and Mr. Christie and Mr. Warner to discuss this. And I am a huge fan of development and construction and redevelopment. In this particular case, though, I have a problem with the TIF financing, primarily because I don't know that it actually fits into our TIF policy. As Mrs. Aaron, who got up here and spoke, just a few weeks ago, we had a tough vote to deny the MTAA I said the airport authority, but the bus service, a mill increase. And that was very tough, but it's just our finances are so strained, and our mill levy we already have on our businesses and property owners in Topeka is so high already. I would have gotten killed had I voted to raise that a mill. And, on my side of town, I represent the southeast side of town, and when we hear that retail on Wanamaker wants incentives, it's a very tough sell on my side of town. So I will tell you, I'm not a CID. I think it's a totally, as Mr. Lesser said, is a totally different animal, because that's something you willingly impose on yourself and your customers. They can avoid that by not coming, but to your business. But with the TIF in this case, I can't support your TIF application at this point. So, but I appreciate your information, your time here.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, would it be permissible for me to make a response? I know it wasn't a question, Councilman Emerson.
Typically, unless you are asked upon to make a remark, we would do this, but the ability to do so is not warranted unless you have a question asked by the council. But thank you for offering.
Thank you.
Marge, I did want to say something really quick. I testified in front of the Shawnee County delegation last week, and part of the comments that I did make was the fact that the state of Kansas does not allow us to have provisions in the TIF that would give us the opportunity to have some sort of incentive that we have, developers contribute to, that we could either have a housing trust fund or any sort of housing development to help as a social service type of aspect. And there were a few of the members of the delegation that looked at me like, oh, that's a good one. And I don't know where it's going to go. I'm going to continue pursuing it. But right now it's a no, but the delegation in Shawnee County has been made aware that that is not something that we could currently do if we wanted to get creative about having equity in the way that we administer these tools. So that being said, we proceed with the voting. Oh, we now play the Jeopardy song because we are missing a council member. Thank you so much, Mr. Neiman. Councilman Jensen.
For the sake of filling time,
No.
don't tempt me. I will be happy to sing. Now that I have a child, I have to get all worked up for birthdays again, apparently. So to respond to your comments, I do agree with you in incentivizing development on Wanamaker being concerning. However, we're not actually losing tax money in this case because it's the base what we have and then any money that's gained above that. So we're still getting the same amount of tax revenue we would. And again, gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. We're not losing any tax money. We're just diverting future tax money, which if the project sits as it is, we wouldn't have anyway. So we're not losing anything. We're investing in the opportunity to have it in the future. But if we were to bond or divert existing revenue into that, I would share your thoughts and be concerned. But there's nothing there, and unless we invest, we're not going to have anything.
Councilman Emerson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jensen. And I do understand that. My issue is, as Councilman Lesser said earlier, we have a lot of local developers who've been here for a number of years, and they just fix up their property, and their property value goes up year after year after year, and they don't get any incentive. As a matter of fact, they pay the full property tax. So that's to me, it is an issue of fairness that if you let your property run down, or if you buy something that's dilapidated, and by the way, the purchase price you hope that's imputed in the purchase price. You should get a great deal on buying something dilapidated. So hopefully, that pays for itself in that case. But I see, I just don't want it to become a thing where people basically say, I'm not gonna maintain my property because eventually I'll ask for a TIF or a SID to fix it up. I just think if we do too many of these, it kind of becomes a game where everyone, every project has to be incentivized or it won't happen. So, but I do appreciate your comments.
I would agree.
Councilwoman Hiller.
If I could ask a question across the table too, I think Mr. Gerber, who's working on the negotiations, one of the things I noticed, citizens have been concerned that this is a property that a developer simply neglected, and that then we would turn around and subsidize, and as Councilman Emerson is saying, we don't want to encourage that, kind of be enablers by just swooping in every time somebody let something go down. In the paperwork that we don't have much paperwork on this yet, but in what we do have, it shows the tax history and the tax value dropped even in I think it's 5 or 6 years that's displayed from the beginning of that time to today. When we negotiate the development agreements, I think we did this on the Academy Sports one, we can actually negotiate what that base is, can we not? So that, for instance, it could be negotiated to go back to what that value was 5 years ago before it dropped to its worst.
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Hiller, we can negotiate that number. It can go anywhere from 0 to, what is reasonable, I guess. We certainly haven't had any conversations about taking it back to what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if that's something the body wants to see, we would have to reframe our negotiations, but we've certainly wanted to focus on what it is, not what it was.
I think people have been afraid of losing ground, and we definitely, everyone knows, potholes galore. We need the property taxes. And I think when we did 29th and Fairlawn, we negotiated to go back. I mean, by the time we were in negotiation, that thing was cleared. And we went back and set the threshold at what it had been when the bowling alley was still there, something other than rock bottom.
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman, I'm not sure that's totally accurate. I would have to check a number, but I think it was essentially rock bottom for the base. I think it was like $2,000 or something. It was not much, because essentially that's what it was worth.
I just wanted to open that up to see if it was an option, because I know people are worried about that.
Thank you. Councilmember Lesser.
The only thing that I would add, and I don't want to open a whole nother can of worms, but as we do move forward in looking at these in totality, we have to also be accountable as a city moving forward to try to eliminate some of these, these issues in the future. Because as I look through these photos, multiple code violations within this, and we got to do a better job of identifying these things early helping to eliminate these type of things, so we don't let properties get to this point. And I just say that, like I said, I don't want to open another can of worms, but it is a vicious cycle. I mean, the last thing that we want to do is do a project like this, then the TIF runs out in 22 years, the CID runs out, and oh my gosh, nobody's taking care of this thing, and here we are back again. Oh, we need another TIF, you know. So I know that's probably not accurate, but my point is, I think worthwhile to look at. This didn't happen overnight, and we need to do a better job identifying those things and being proactive so it doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we go back to the point of being ready to proceed with a vote. Clerk, are you ready? All right. So, without further ado, we proceed by voting.
Okay, we have 9 yes, Mr. Emerson voting no.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item D, if the clerk would read.
D is a request to refer the Topeka Personnel Code to the Council Policy and Finance Committee in accordance with Section 8.5A1 of the governing body rules and procedures.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I'm going to turn this right over to City Attorney Robertson to go through what we're requesting. Lisa?
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, and governing body. What this does is it's in accord with what the council passed back in October of 17. There was an amendment made to the city code in which the Human Resources Director and the City Attorney were charged with reviewing the personnel code and in the last quarter of even-numbered years, and then bringing it forward to the full body to discuss any proposed amendments by March 31st of odd-numbered years. So given the fact that this was kind of the first review and the last revisions to the code were made back in 2011, we thought it would be best if we referred this to the Policy and Finance Committee, or asked that you do that, similar to what we did a couple of years ago with the Title VI overview with the animals, and it went to the Public Health and Safety Committee. So that's what staff's requesting. We have some proposed amendments and some information to provide to you. Jackie and I have been working diligently for many months to try to get it ready for y'all, and we think this would probably be the best course of action because we didn't know if the full body would want to go through numerous meetings to consider chunks of the personnel code. So that's what we suggest, and it's obviously your decision.
Attorney Robertson, if I may ask, it seems like, and just to me, that this is more of a administrative duty. How did the council end up regulating staff code?
Mayor, it was initially taken out of the municipal code back in '92 and put in as a separate document called the Personnel Code. Then the form of government changed in 2004. And so since that time, there's really not been any kind of comprehensive look at it, given the change in the form of government. So that's kind of part of what the Human Resources Director and I have been attempting to do, is to try to pick out those things that are very policy-driven as opposed to those things that are more administrative procedural matters. But those are the things that we want to talk through with the Policy and Finance Committee if you all choose to refer it to that body.
Thank you very much. Councilman Jensen.
Motion to refer.
We have a motion by Councilman Jensen, second by Councilmember Cohen. Do we have any comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed. Ooh. Oh, Mr. Ledbetter.
Away to my right, looks like it's going to the council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ledbetter. Happy birthday to me. Made you smile. There we go. All right. We now proceed with voting.
Councilmember Hill? I'm sorry. I thought I did. All right, right, we have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to action item, non-action items, item 6. And the first one is item A, if the clerk would read.
A is discussion of the proposed 2020-2029 CIP and the 2020-2022 CIB.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we do not have anything to present. We simply are here to see if there are any other discussion items related to amendments or other items that you would like to discuss. Our intent is to gather the information relative to the amendment items that you presented already. That would be then your opportunity to make a motion to amend the budget based on what you presented. At the April 2nd meeting, we would take those amendments, or you would present those amendments and decide on them at that time.
I see some movement. Anybody else wants to have? Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. So there's been some discussion about the licensing costs for Microsoft products. I'm curious if anyone's available to discuss where those prices are coming from, what versions of software they're for.
I can't speak to the version of software, but I can tell you that they relate to, unless Nick has information.
Okay.
But I believe that it relates to the state contract. I think that we have been using the state contract for those licensing agreements, but I will confirm that relative to that.
Well, we can discuss more of that offline, and then I can report back to the council, but there's been some concern. So, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Clear.
Man, I was going to say, good job, Mayor. I have a question, let me find it here. I have a question about light poles, or light signals. And
Brian.
it said, let me find it. I may have asked this before. Trying to find my notes on my page. Off the top of your head, do you know how much the funding was?
For traffic signals themselves, it's $885,000 per year.
How much?
$885,000.
And that was for 3.
3 to possibly 4, depending on the intersection.
I think that was my question. I wanted to make sure that was only for 3.
Standard intersection costs around between $250 and $275. If we go back and completely reconstruct the intersection, we do some smaller projects where we update for pedestrian signals, we might be able to get in less than that. But it's a maximum of, 3 full-size intersections or some other smaller improvements.
Do we do that ourselves, or do we contract and someone else does that?
We contract that out. We would contract the design as well as the construction.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Jensen.
I would be interested in hearing from our constituents if we could.
All right. Ms. Dawn Bueller.
Excuse me.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for this opportunity to present some public comment tonight on behalf of the Kansas River. My name is Dawn Bueller. I am the Kansas River Keeper with Friends of the Kaw. We are a nonprofit that works to protect and preserve the Kansas River. I spend my days on the river as your Kansas River Keeper, defending it from polluters. It is safe to say that I likely spend more time than anyone else on the Kansas River. I'm also an active member of the Kansas Basin Regional Advisory Committee for the Kansas Water Plan and Vision, which involves the efforts of many people across Kansas to address the water problems of our state. And most importantly, I'm a native Kansan, proud farmer's daughter, born and raised on the banks of the Kansas River. I am here today to ask that you approve the budget for the repairs to the Topeka Weir. We ask that you consider the following. The Topeka Weir, or the water intake, is a low-head dam. A low-head dam is a drop in the river that creates a backwash below the dam where anything and anyone can be trapped and recirculated around and round, making escape and rescue difficult and mostly impossible. 3 people have died from the Topeka Weir since 2007. 2 men drowned in 2007 when the canoe they were in capsized after going over a spillway at the south end of the weir. A man in a kayak, an experienced kayaker, drowned at the same site in 2011. The Kansas River was designated as a national waterway in 2012 by Governor Sam Brownback and the National Park Service. This elevates the status of the river as people are using the river similar to a biking trail like the Katy Trail in Missouri. Boaters can stop in communities along the water trail for dinner, hotel stay, or to get supplies as they make their way along the trail. The state of Kansas boasts about the Kansas River Water Trail on their tourism website, and we have a partnership between Friends of the Kaw and the Kansas Department of Wildlife Parks and Tourism to develop more access and amenities along the 173-mile-long trail. In 2018, Friends of the Kaw even received an honor of the Kansas Governor's Tourism Award for our work to develop the Kansas River Water Trail. We are also actively working with Manhattan, Lawrence, and Kansas City to develop river access. More people are coming to the Kansas River than ever before. Last year, we had 380 people on the Little Apple Paddle, which is a river trip in Manhattan. Last year, Friends of the Kaw introduced over 1,000 people to the Kansas River through our educational program, and we had 4,500 hours of volunteer community service on the river. And last summer, Wildlife and Parks did a 60-day survey at the DeSoto and Perry-LeCompton boat ramps. The data shows that during the short period, the DeSoto ramp averaged 777 users, and this is just in a 60-day period. And the LeCompton ramp averaged 451.
You still have a minute.
Okay. The trend is upward on the Kansas River. There are over 10 businesses, three of which are involved in the Topeka community. Currently, we can't morally advocate for people to use the Kansas River through this part of Topeka. It is dangerous. There is very little one can do when coming upon the Topeka Weir on the river. There is often a sandbar island before the weir and no time or opportunity to get to the north bank where there is a ramp for exit. If you look at the Google Earth image I have provided, you can see the dynamics at play from 2012 when the river had low conditions. The Topeka Riverfront Authority is gaining speed as they work on the riverfront development and connections to the city, the economy, and the community. A critical piece of this development is the safety of the Topeka Weir. It will be difficult and maybe even impossible to develop the downtown without first fixing the safety issues on the river. There is currently $500,000. I have 1 minute.
Do you need additional time?
One more paragraph.
1 minute?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? Sure. Councilwoman Hiller makes the motion. Councilman Jensen seconds. We now proceed by voting.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes, ma'am, you have additional time.
Thank you very much. There is currently $500,000 obligated from Kansas Department of Wildlife Parks and Tourism to assist with this project. There is currently a timeline on these funds, so now represents a great opportunity for this financial assistance for the development of the Topeka Riverfront and for the increased recreation on the river. Today, I represent the Kansas River. I ask that you please fix this before another accident occurs. Please place the budget for the safety repairs to the Topeka Weir as a priority for the sake of our river, for the sake of our people. And I'd like to thank you for your service to the city of Topeka. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.
Thank you, governing body. As I said last week, I do support that Weir project in the CIP budget. Earlier, this TIF policy is still up here. I can't get past it. I have asked for years to support code enforcement doing the job of code enforcement. On the CIP, again, last week I spoke in support of the KTA interchange. I see it's on here. I support that. The East Topeka Council supports that as part of Momentum 2022. Another project that they're very interested in, I mentioned last week, is the California project from 37th to 45th. And I told you how that had been bumped 10 years on a northern section when it wasn't fulfilled within a time period. There's still that concern on the east side. I hope that isn't a real concern, but there is concern. But I did check with Tom Flanagan, the engineer with the county, who does an excellent job on his work on streets, and he said that the 29th Street project from the Turnpike to Croco is going to be finished in 2020. I think I sent that email to all of you. So I would still propose that that be moved forward to 2021. So that is a request. Another thing that I was wondering about was this pavement preventive maintenance. I know from talking to Tom Flanagan that he used to work for the city. He said they used to do that, and it worked very well, and it prevented a lot of the potholes. I noticed that under part of this program, we go from $333 million per year on one of the line items, and then we drop down, and then we start doing it with private contractors for $2 million a year. So is that because they're more effective, or what is that? I do agree, and I've said this publicly at these meetings in the past. I think we need to do more and more of our road repair, but maintenance by private contractors. And I will tell you, from my observation of filling potholes of some of the staff, the next day, they're not full again. And that's over and over again. I hear this from other people too, that these potholes, they may be filling them, but they're not staying filled. And the county, Mr. Flanagan, has a rule, an expectation that the potholes they fix last a year. So I think at some time we have got to have a serious discussion about how things are done as part of the CIP budget. So, okay, they gave me the entrance to talk about that. My time. I think I'll go ahead and skip public comments in honor of your birthday, Mayor. So I'm going to finish up here.
Mr. Ledbetter, we appreciate hearing from you, so.
So anyway, yeah, they finally took the TIF off. I do support those. Those are cool, I think. I think they'll help the city a lot. But I think that, you know, these CIPs are very important, and you're setting the direction for the city over the next several years. So whatever the council proposes about leases and buying computers instead and things like that, I just wish we would have those honest discussions and let the council have a say-so and let the citizens have a say-so as to how this city does these plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Additional, Councilwoman, Deputy Mayor Clear.
I asked last week about the pages that are attached to the back of the CIP, with, you know, the project, the trade, the equipment, and I was supposed to get an update on when those projects would be finished, or because they weren't put in for a year to be done. Is that what you emailed me about today, or do
No.
I have? Okay, someone said they were going to get that to me, and I haven't gotten that. Mainly about the fire stations.
I'm not positive on what, are you talking all the facilities projects that were listed in the back here?
Mr. Peak was up here last time, and he took that note down that I wanted that, but.
Yes, that's the list of facilities projects and the order that we would look at doing them. They're mentioned, I'll verify that with him, but I think we have.
But it includes City Hall and.
Right, but it's intended for all facility projects and where they would be accomplished within the budget. I don't know.
Yeah, because I'd like to know if it's 2020 or 2024.
I mean, some of it is listed, it is given a year in
Yeah,
the list.
most doesn't.
We'll verify that we have them in the proper year and get back with you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I've made it clear my concern about sticking to our $9 million a year cap if we could, but also that I felt like we could reposition some financing, that I wanted to do it all, just see if we could figure out how to do that. And it's kind of scary, but I took a run at it. And so I wanted to share that with you for your thought. I think within the limits of COMA, you can call me and ask questions or challenge. What I want to do is run through the list. This list is based off just using the summary sheet that's in the front of the book, of our notebooks. I don't have the technical expertise to do new charts or any maps or anything like that. So once you've got them, if I could just kind of run through. This is a combination of observations of some of the input that we've gotten and some of the conversations that we've had already. When I was looking through things, I realized that I was looking on the City Hall documents, back in 16 in the old version of how we used to do our CIP books, each project included not only the cost of the construction of the project, but the design, as well as any anticipated cost of financing. And that has sort of worked its way out, not entirely, but as a result, we're not really looking at apples and apples right now. And so my suggestion would be that certainly that we be consistent, in that probably best that all the proposals do include the financing costs if there is bonding or other financing involved. In the big picture, we observed at first that the 6 to 10 year, the out 5 years of our CIP didn't have enough totals, any subtotals in them, so you could see how much per year it would be in terms of cash or bonding or utilities and so on. So suggestion that we do that even now, but certainly in the future. Looking back at our third quarter report, I don't think we've got fourth quarter, or at least I don't remember getting it. But we have projects that are marked on hold that have been in the system for a while. I also remember that back when I first got on, now 10 years ago in 2009, what we did was voted to sunset anything that had not moved forward, that had been funded before but hadn't moved forward. And I would suggest that that is a process we could use now. So anything that's 2017 or older that's marked on hold, or that has not had any activity in the last 4 months, and that was fairly random, so there might be a better way to define that we go through and sunset them, just close the projects and either close them totally or pop them forward to the 6 to 10 year bucket so that they can emerge again. Some of those are one-off projects and some of them are annual where we just got way behind. So, suggestion to close them out. That would end up loosening up money that's being spent on temp notes or bonding, as well as just prior commitments. I think we could safely return neighborhood infrastructure to $1.4 million a year, which it's been for a long time, and save some money in the budget in that way. I think that the downtown signal coordination item, which is in 2020, could be moved to the 6 to 10 year list. We're working on Pole Quincy Viaduct. There are so many changes that are happening. We've shifted into a complete streets mode where we're not just talking about coordinating cars, but also bikes and pedestrians. I'm just not sure that there's value in doing that right now for us. So it's just my thought. Traffic signal replacement is one that I've brought up before. I think we could start migrating them into the cash budget with this first CIB and CIP that we're looking at. There's some notes at the end of this, but we currently are $6 million over our goal number in our general fund reserve. And we also, staff has been talking about the debt management fund, but it appears that it would have an ending balance at the end of this, or that would have at the end of 2018 of about $6 million. We are at the high end of what our debt service is. It should start to go down, so that number should be safe. If we migrated, the traffic signal replacements are roughly $1 million a year. They're under that, but let's say roughly $1 million. We could start to migrate those out, and you can see the detail, but I think we can do it. There are 2 fire apparatus, the one in 2021, and then a little later in the list, the aerial in 2023. I think, again, we could switch those to cash. That's not all the fire trucks that are in here, but 2 of them to get their rotation started. And when we get to the end of the list, I can tell you how much money we would save with just those 5. Well, I can tell you right now. For the 5 years, for that same 5 years, 2020 to 2024, and I want people to check my math. I worked with Nick's charts that he did for us. But if I've got the numbers right, and on the second page you can see 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, or 24 at the top of the page, we should save $667,000 in interest only in that first 5 years, and over the entire life of those 7 items, over $1 million in interest to the taxpayers, if we think we can pull off that conversion. On the facilities improvement and repair projects that are in that new line for $2.3 million a year, I would hope that our resolution, when we pass the CIP, would ask the staff to present each of those projects to us before they go forward. If we approve that budget amount, that we see those projects and know what it is that's rolling up. There's a hazmat vehicle in there that I would suggest moving to the 6 to 10 year project list. I know it's been pushed down a little bit already. Again, trying to hang with our $9 million a year cap. The City Hall renovation Phase 2 and Phase 3 then, I left City Hall renovation in. I know we're talking about it on the 2nd. We've got details to learn and work out, but to go ahead and push those 2 extra phases into the 6 to 10 year list. If we can reduce temp noting by $200,000, I think we can. There have been various management techniques like redoing the engineering fund, or when we bid projects, or when we actually bond them, that can save us that temp noting money. City manager and I talked about it just a little bit. I guess in Iowa, where he came from, it's not even legal to temp note. So they work out other systems to front the money and then get the projects financed. The GPS vehicle location and preemption, this is Karen's thought here. I would drop it or move it to the long-term project list. I don't think we need special gear just to find our employees and our trucks. I think we should be able to do that. And in terms of the signal preemption, it's so dangerous to go through an intersection and make assumptions that traffic has stopped. I think our emergency vehicles and drivers are trained to slow down and be careful at every intersection anyway. So I'm not sure there's a big net gain for us, but others have other opinions, I'm sure. If we're able to get this down to the $9 million a year, which what I just described would do, and if we continue to be good with our bids, as is happening this year, and or we have a substantial amount of savings by closing out some of these old projects, I think we'd be able to go ahead and put South Gage from 37th to 45th in 2021. And my suggestion would be to go ahead and pencil it in with a note on it that if reprogrammed funds are available through bid savings or the sunsetting of prior projects. So I hope you would have a look over that. The best I could display it, the numbers. I tried to display the math so you could see where it went and how the transition would work. What we do have, we discussed last time, is there is a bubble in the debt service in 2023 to 25. It drops a little bit after this year, then it bubbles up, but then if we stick with our 9 million cap, it will start to drop substantially after 2025 in our debt service. Further, our Heartland Park obligation and our College Hill obligation pay off in roughly 2024, 25. Which means that if we can hold the line on what we're borrowing, that frees up money for the same projects in years 6 to 10 or otherwise financed. And I'm eager for feedback and comments, but I'd sure like to do it if we think it would work. With that, then, again, I'm open for comments. I did have a question about when we would vote on the CIP, based on the fact that we're going to have a session on the City Hall plan on the 2nd, and that might be significant to people. So I wondered if we'd be better to plan that vote either on the 9th or the 16th so that we could have the discussion about City Hall on a separate, before we barreled on into the CIP vote. So, just a suggestion.
City Manager.
As far as postponing, staff has looked at that, and it is possible for us to do that, to postpone it a week with the decision. It would all determine if you felt comfortable with where we decided on the 2nd. We could leave it as a possibility and then make the decision to defer action until the 9th if there were questions that needed to be asked. I wouldn't want to preclude on the assuming that we need to do the 9th, but it would be a possibility that we could support.
Okay. Thank you very much. Additional comments with regards to the CIP? Again, this is not an action item. This is just for discussion. I know that, oh, yes, Councilman Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to sort of piggyback on Councilwoman Hiller's, I do think that the signal preemption is actually kind of an important thing, in my opinion. We, as I've told a few of you, I went on a snowplow ride during a snowstorm, and I can tell you there's a lot of time wasted sitting at those stoplights in the middle of a snowstorm because they absolutely will not run the lights, and if there's another car in the intersection, they sit there and they have to sometimes wait through 2 or 3 cycles. And I know that snow removal is something that our constituents are pretty concerned about. What I also saw is that sometimes those snow plows, as they're sitting at those lights, have a scoop that's full of snow, and they have a real hard time getting started up again. They lose their momentum, and they sit there and spin the tires for a little while. And so I think that's something I actually want to see in there. I know it, and it's not a big item, if I'm not mistaken, but it does go beyond emergency services. And you're right, I don't want a fire truck, going through an intersection at 60 miles an hour. But I think that's important. Also, she mentioned gauge from 37th to 45th, which is in my district, and it as I've had multiple conversations with the city manager and director of public works about this particular stretch of street. It's probably the one thing that I get inquiries from constituents on pretty much a daily basis. It was supposed to be done years and years ago, and it was put off. In fact, it was taken off of the CIP entirely, and we've gotten it back on. But it isn't right now scheduled until 2023. And if you've driven that road recently, you know that there's no way it can last that long. And so I know we've talked about possibilities of ways that we could move it up to 2021 and possibly even do the engineering this year. And I definitely, that's something that I want to go on record as saying I want really badly. Thanks.
Councilman Lesser.
The only thing I would add was I would echo Councilman Mays' comments. I too, after having different conversations in regards to with the fire and police in regards to the signals, I agree with Karen that they are trained properly, all those type of things, but it is another layer of safety if these are in sync with them when they pass through. And in regards to the gauge, as you were talking about there, I echo with him with that because I've got his number memorized now because I remind people that that's his district when they come to me to talk about that road. So I do agree with him there.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you all for the comments. I guess that this item is potentially going to be moved on to the 2nd or to the 9th, so we will keep watching. This point in time, there are no more items on our agenda, so we proceed with public comment, with announcements. We don't have the clerk because there's not 2 weeks without meetings, and city manager.
I will mention that a few of the items that we have coming up on the 2nd, though, we do have the Topeka Flag Redesign Initiative will be here. Shawnee County Health will provide us a status update. The new county rankings came out, so they'll be here to talk about that. We're all going to have a discussion item on the Topeka Citizen Satisfaction Survey. The company that did the survey will be here, and we'll go through that. The Sherwood Crossing CID public hearing and ordinance, we moved back, and then some zoning ordinance issues with cell towers, and then the big one would be discussing the City Hall revised budget. So, as far as my announcements, I do have two. I'll pass the first one around while I talk about the second one. The second item is that our Topeka Way to Work applications are now available. If you go to the city's website, topeka.org, you can, if you're a individual, trying to remember the age, but if you're interested in working for the city through our Topeka Way to Work program, the applications are now available through April 12th in order for you to be able to consider that. So take a look at that program, look at the guidelines, see if you'd be interested in that. The other one I have is I'm passing around a notification that will be going out regarding Topeka Fire Department Citizens Fire Academy. They're going to begin classes April 17th and run through May 15th. Anyone interested can go and download an application beginning March 22nd at topeka.org/TFD. Applicants must be at least 18 if you're interested in that. So take a look at that. It's another great way to learn about Department of the City and how they do business. So otherwise, I have nothing else, Mary.
Thank you very much. Well, first I want to start by telling everybody that I heard that St. Patrick's Day, I did miss this one, but it was like 8 blocks of packed people. So Topeka knows how to party. And following St. Patrick's Day, we had a wonderful visit with the Consulate General of Ireland and also with Minister Mary Mitchell O'Connor of Higher Education. And in that meeting that we had, Chief Duke was there as well, and we had a great conversation about partnerships and learning about what they do with education, talking about workforce development, and it was just really interesting to see some of the things that they're doing. They spoke specifically of the area of Limerick that was completely transformed by them doing some really serious workforce development things that we are looking at doing right now. So it's kind of interesting that even our partners across the ocean are having the same challenges that we're having, and that we're having conversations all around to see how we could all do better. I had the privilege today to hang out with some really cool people. I got a chance to be on the radio with Danielle Norwood and talked about the rescue mission, and I had a chance to be at Washburn Rural today and talk to students about leadership and engagement and civics, and wrapped around the day by introducing the Topeka, the Greater Topeka Partnership Youth Council. I want to thank the council members. I know that throughout the process, and I want to publicly acknowledge that we had talked about getting this council developed, and things started moving so fast that I think that the council members, we had a conversation last week in our retreat that maybe they needed more information on how this was going to go. But it was just, I mean, at the speed of lightning. These young people were so interested in becoming engaged. And then the Greater Topeka Partnership got involved, and Forge got involved. And next thing you know, it's like we have a council, and we have not only a council of young people, but we have individuals that want to sign up to be council representatives for their areas. And I just want to thank the council for their grace, because I know that it's been a lot and we're doing a whole bunch of cool things, but good communication is always needed. So I want to also thank the people that signed up for the program. I'm super excited about the youth. I don't know if any of you got a chance to come and listen to the kids speak, but it was an experience to see them present and stand up in front of community leaders and talk about what their vision is. And their vision is, we want to stay in Topeka. We want to stay in Topeka, not just for themselves, but for everybody else. Hashtag FOMO. And then finally, thank you for everybody that has been so kind to me. I even have this mystery carrot cake that showed up at my desk. Everybody has been awesome. I've gotten a whole bunch of messages of kind things that people are doing in the community. And I chose 2 nonprofits to support. I supported the Rescue Mission and the YWCA. So if you want to give to them, just go to Michelle for Topeka, the Facebook page. There's a link there, and you can just give $5, $10 or just something. And if you don't want to give, it's okay. So, Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Just some quick comments on St. Patrick's Day. This was the first year that I wasn't in the front of the parade for some reason, and so I decided I would go anyway and ride my bike with the bicyclists in the back of the parade. And observation is the parade was huge, long, packed, and it is really, really hard to ride your bicycle really slow and slap hands of all the kids lined up along the street. But I didn't get hurt. So anyway, it was a good experience. Try everything once. And if people haven't noticed it, depends on how you get to downtown, but as I went to the parade, I noticed, as I have before, and this is from my district, but people walking from as far away as west of Washburn with the kids and the wagon going for the day to downtown. And I just think that's pretty cool. So that's it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Boom. Wow, I'm so caught off guard. Fundraiser tomorrow night, sole reason I gave you each a flyer. You have to have the flyer or online, the picture of the flyer for us to get 20%. And I think that's it.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. The fire chief at station in Oakland, I can't think of his name. Can you help me out, Chief? He's retiring this week, so if you get a chance to go by and tell him.
Larry Peters?
Larry Peters, there you go. Get a chance to go by and stop by or call over there and wish him well. It's kind of a bittersweet. He's been over there and around, and great guy. So I wanted to say that. And on my, the mayor asked us to do an act of kindness, so I thought I'd start it out, and we would all sing with Mr. Lesser helping me, as well as Mr. Henderson, sing the mayor happy birthday. You know, you only get that when you're a kid, and she does act like a kid, so we're going to do that on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mayor. Happy birthday to you. And that's our act of kindness, and happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Councilman Toño Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
I also got to spend some time today with some very cool people, the students of Highland Park High School. As Miss Ortiz always says, it's great to be a Scot. I was at a career day thing over at Highland Park for, I guess it was all morning, and had a lot of great kids. And I want to just give a shout out to the fire department. Had a crew there recruiting for the fire department, and also Public Works Utilities was there, and all those people did a great job. I did find out one thing though in this for the fire department. something I did not know, a couple of the students, I was talking to them afterwards, I guess you can't be a firefighter until you're 21. You can't apply. So in talking to your people there, if we could get that Explorer post or whatever back, because you're losing kids. They want to do it at 17 or 18, but they lose interest maybe by age 21. So, but had a great time over there, and I appreciate, like I said, the fire department being there and utilities. There's been a lot of talk about our residency policy that's coming up, and it was great to see the city of Topeka there, in a local city school, actively recruiting. So I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Councilman Padilla? Councilman Jensen?
Thank you. I want to congratulate the team that put on the parade. It was fantastic, excellent work. I also want to thank the folks in our public safety departments. They are truly unsung heroes of that day. They're all there hiding, waiting for something to happen. I'm thrilled that we didn't need any of you all, but thank you again for taking the time on a Saturday to help the rest of us get out there and enjoy it. And it was quite the fantastic day. I had the privilege of getting up at 5 and starting with Blarney breakfast. That was excellent. Got to wear a very large, obnoxious hat. And then my lovely bride drugged me on a 5K walk, which I'm embarrassed to admit my child was faster at finishing than I am, and he's only 6 weeks old. And then the parade was fantastic. It was just a wonderful day. Spring is upon us unofficially, and I can't wait to have a fantastic summer in Topeka. Thank you so much.
Councilman Mays?
Thank you, Mayor. Happy birthday. I do want to I think it's funny that for your birthday, the city attorney has given us an hour-long executive session tonight. Probably could have saved the singing for executive session, but I did want to thank all of you for keeping your microphones off while we were singing.
Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to say it was a privilege. Me and my family carried the city's flag at the front of the parade this year, and it was really fun. And I was really kind of bummed that none of you showed up. It's all Karen there, but none of you showed up to help us walk with the city flag, you guys. So I sure hope you had a good excuse to not be there.
I was dying after the 5K.
So anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Lesser? All right. We now have 3 individuals signed up for public comment, the first one being Mr. Russell Burton.
Thank you for your time and patience, City Council. I appreciate the moment. I just wanted to kind of update you guys on the unhoused project that we've kind of been working on. We took 37 street homeless people and provided them with shelter plus care vouchers. We now have 7 that are in houses, and we have 10 more that will go this week. So that leaves us, with a little less than 15 folks, and most of those folks are none of those folks are housed in the hotel. They're out on the street still. So the folks that we put in the hotel, we've been able to direct services there to them and get them housed and move them into homes. I have a list of probably 50 additional individuals that would be interested in participating in the program and probably qualify. My estimation is there's somewhere around a total of 200 folks that could be available for this kind of project. We've already brought in, like I say, about 37. So we've probably addressed about a quarter of the street homeless in our community, and that would be folks living in bandos or garages or on the street in tents. The whole tent community down by the river, every one of those individuals qualified for a shelter plus care voucher. There's only 4 people on the river right now. The rest of those folks have been housed or in hotels, and those folks, so there's 4 that are down in the river. They're the strongmen of the encampment, and they have a difficult time coming off because they're big fish in a small pond. They provide warming for people, and they provide all sorts of services for folks that can't get into the mission. So they're having a difficult time, but they will likely come off too. I just want to thank some of the folks that have been involved in this. The City Council, Corey, Jordan, and Greg from her office. Obviously, the body here has been supportive of this. Sergeant Clem and the IDs have been outstanding. We couldn't get anybody in houses without those IDs, and that's kind of our holdup. We still have some people that need IDs, and they're waiting for those to happen Thursday, and then they'll go right into homes. The state, Misty Bosch Hastings, providing the support for paying for the hotel rooms, outstanding. Vallejo, Dennis, and his caseworkers have been helping out. Grace Med has joined in. All these folks are bending rules and making it so that we can do this in a 2-week period is our goal. The homeless task force, Mary Tibbetts there, has been great. She's provided guidance and direction for this. I presented the homeless task force 15 minutes last week. They gave me some time. They're working on coordinated entry and helping us there. And we've had community volunteers. Misty brought some volunteers. My organization has volunteers. And then some of the folks that are homeless that we're helping have been volunteering. For example, wherever Pam is the communication heart of the hotel. She goes and knocks on doors and talks to folks and distributes food and things like that. She's done an outstanding job. I could tell you a little bit of the process, but we got to have people got to have IDs, they got to have shelter plus care vouchers, they got to search for housing, they have medical needs, dental needs, mental health needs, food stamps, disability, Medicaid. We're trying to provide all those services around everybody. There's a couple of structural things that we've run into. One are the IDs I already mentioned. The other are the shelter plus care vouchers. It appears as though we've reached the city's maximum amount of shelter plus care vouchers, and we still have probably, like I said, 150 people on the streets. So that is going to be a challenge that I'm not quite sure how we're going to, that's going to be addressed. And I finally wanted to thank the city council for doing this right. And you guys saw what happens when you don't do things right. You get a $750,000 bill for a bridge that you could have easily housed that young man for the rest of his life, and you would have still come out tons of money ahead. So thank you guys for doing it right. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next person sent us to speak is Mr. Mikkel Endler.
Good evening, everybody. Madam Mayor, happy birthday. City Council, thanks for the moment. And I also would like to express my gratitude at just being able to be here at this meeting and see a little of the process. I'm one of the faces of this program that Doc Burton was just talking about. And I'd just like to express my gratitude that such programs are even in place. I'll be 55 in about 2 weeks. And for 53 of those years, I've been self-supporting, self-standing. I, at one time, was married, had 3 kids that were born here in Topeka, all with the same woman. We raised our kids together until they were all of such an age that, you know, it was all right if we split up, and we did, because you don't stay together to keep the kids happy, because that doesn't keep the kids happy. And I just want you to know that this program is working. I was negotiating those trails behind the mission down Curtis Street to where Curtis Street is not a street anymore, where it's not even a gravel road anymore. And I tell you, this thing does not like to have to go through those trails, up the snow, between the trees, and then find a place that's warm and dry to sleep. It's not easy to do for an able person. Somebody like me, it's a nightmare. But Vallejo showed up where I was one day and said, how would you like to not sleep outside this weekend? And there was the first blizzard of the season was coming. And I said, yeah. And I've been needing to go get this SSDI thing going for about 7 years, but my pride was just in the way. And I also know that it's just such amazing bureaucracy that I don't even know where to start or how. Mm-hmm. In the month that I've known Dr. Burton, I've gotten food stamps approved. I've gotten a shelter plus care voucher. I now have the choice of saying, I don't want your apartment, I'm gonna take that one, you know? And I got hope again. And I just want to thank you all for that. Let you know this stuff works, and you're doing it right. Keep on doing it right. And I want you to know that in the appropriations, nobody's sitting around just making it rain on people to live in a motel. These folks that appropriate this money, they're coming out 1, 2, 3 times a week and making sure that people that are in this program aren't just posted up in a motel being glad they're not outside. If you're not doing it right, you're not going to fly here. And so, you know, just know that your subordinates and your peers are doing this right. And thanks. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. The last person signed up to speak is Miss Pamela Burkhart.
Hello, my name's Pamela Burkhart. I'm the longest one. I'm thinking I've been out here on the street ever since 2008, yeah, a whole decade and a year. I never wanted to go unknown, but I was the one in the background, Pam. My pride, I can do it, and I did. Weather got really bad, I'm getting old. My health is not really good at all. I have no insurance. I put my pride aside because there's some people out there that really care. Dr. Russell, Matt from Vallejo, and Diane, they made me open up my eyes. You know, I got 2 girls out there, but they're grown. I got a grandson. I want to live more. I want a chance to live more, and I want off the streets. It's been a long time since I've been in a home. I'm in the motel room. It is like anxiety from coming off there into a place. It's overwhelming sometimes. I've only been there a short time, maybe going on 2 weeks. But tomorrow I find out if I'm approved. I know him. I'm approved to this apartment. And all I gotta wait is 2 more days for the inspection, and I'll be in my home. And I have y'all to thank. And I know some of y'all. And that I have 3 of them very much to thank, plus myself for putting my pride down. My daughter is so overwhelmingly happy and so proud of me. And my youngest, she's not talking to me yet, but she will. My mother, she hasn't talked to me in years and years and years and years. I got on Facebook and I did my apartment thingy. My mom got a hold of me. So I know I'm going in the right area. Thank you. And there's so many out there that really, really still need your help. I mean, I busted my butt. I threw down all apartments in the telephone book. I got online, shelterpluscare.com, 1-bedroom studios, whatever. I wrote them all down. I go around and I pass all this information around to everybody out there and to people I know. I got Shelter Plus Care. I'm working on my medical thingy, but now I found there's a flaw. I haven't done my SSI yet, so I don't qualify for the full benefit one, and that's the one I really, really need because my health is really, really bad. We ain't got time for me to go into all that. But I got all that done. I'm an intake worker, case management plan worker at Vallejo. I got all that done. I've had my food stamps ever since I've been 50 years old. Thank you very much. But income, I don't know what job I can work. I can't stand up for a long period of time. I can't sit down for a long period of time. I can't hardly breathe. I walk from there to here. I'm out of breath. I'm out of breath right now. COPD and respiratory heart failure. Those 2, and plus OCD. That's the worst one ever. But still, I got a whole bunch of problems. But you know what? I'm still here, and I still can smile. And I have y'all to thank, and 3 other people to thank. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have the attorney read the parameters for our upcoming executive session.
Motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 20 minutes for consultation with the city's legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privilege matters related to potential litigation as justified by KSA 75-4319B2. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Deputy City Manager Doug Gerber, Financial and Administrative Services Director Jessica Lamondola, Utilities Director Bob Sample, Chief of Litigation Shelley Starr, and myself. No action is anticipated to be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
We have heard the parameters of the executive session. What is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by Councilman Cohen, second by Councilman Emerson. We proceed by voting. Of course. I'll give you 5.
7? Ms. Ortiz. In a bunch.
Here. Oh.
Yep. 9 yes.
Nine having voting yes, the motion passes. The body will recess for a period not to exceed 10 minutes before we get into the meeting again.
I can't.